Hello and welcome. This is an assignment for Education 745, Dr. Marino's course. And I have my interviewee here who's going to serve as my executive manager to answer the questions that I have prepared for this interview. And I just want to thank Miss Joanne for joining us. And she's going to tell us a little bit about herself and her organization once I get started with the questions here. So for question one, is going to read, what is the title of your current position and for what company?
Hey, my name is Joanne Jones, and I am the Chief Academic Officer for Beyond Basics, which is a nonprofit organization committed to eradicating illiteracy in children and adults.
Nice. Is there any particular like age groups that you have that you're targeting for eradicating illiteracy?
So currently, Beyond Basics is in over 30 schools and settings throughout the state, and the majority of our clients are between kindergarten and 12th grade, with a larger focus between 3rd and 12th grade.
Nice. And we're going to go ahead and get into our second question here. How long have you been in management or a leadership position?
So, in terms of career or specifically at Beyond Basics?
Both. So at
Okay.
Beyond Basics and then for just the duration of your career.
All right. So I started at Beyond Basics 11 months ago. There was a need in the organization for an academic at a high level. Previously, for the past 20 years, I have been the top leader in a school. I held the positions of director, executive director, principal/development, and head of school. And in each location, whether it was a private, non-public, I was the top leader in the organization. So for 20 years, I've been in an academic leader with a staff from maybe 30 to 160 employees working under me.
Nice. For question three, what is your methodology for addressing challenging tasks from a management perspective?
So when I am tasked or my group is tasked, and at Beyond Basics, the majority of the organization rolls up to me. So the literacy team, the operations team, the assessment team, the supply team, when we are tasked with a challenging request, for example, currently we have 7 locations for a summer project. The number of students was capped at one number, and there's a lot of flux and flexibility going on. So that is requiring a lot of people to deploy in ways that they may not have thought the summer was going to roll out for them. So my management style is to bring all the impacted people who have a voice in the solution together. That's normally middle management and upper middle management, and to sit down and consider the options and then select the best option. I think those meetings are as much for buy-in as they are for solving. And you'll get a totally different response than if you try to solve it yourself and everybody below you feels done too.
Oh, absolutely. And for our fourth question, how do you receive and analyze critical feedback from within your organization?
So at Beyond Basics, we are extremely analytical, and we're also fairly critical of ourselves. We are deeply committed to student outcomes, specifically moving the needle on literacy. And so it is an ordinary life experience for an employee here to go into a meeting, to look at a cycle review sheet or an outcome review, and to have to address any shortfalls or shortcomings. And our approach at Beyond Basics is to let the data speak to the truth. And so if we are faced with critical feedback, we do something called a deep dive. We take a closer look at any points of failure, and we, depending on that point of failure, discuss it within that appropriate group. One group that meets twice a week is the site review team, and that team in particular deals with outcomes. And so we will meet and regularly address what do we need to change, what's gone well, and do so with certainly the CEO at the head of the table, but Chief Academic Officer in my role is at the table, and then everybody who is in charge of individual sites. So there's always a collective strategic discussion, but in that shared management or decision-making style, there is always one person that makes a final decision and deals with the feedback.
Understood. For our next question, how do you handle complaints regarding your employees from your clients?
So at Beyond Basics, we have two different clients or two different types of clients. We have the client and the customer. And some of our projects or schools are philanthropically funded and others are grant funded. And so as an organization, we are charged with adhering to the contract or the scope of work. If we get complaints, they're not really probably delivered as complaints. It could be that an employee has not presented themselves in a way that a client would have expected. Perhaps a certain tutor, they, don't feel that that tutor has attended well enough at their institution, but normally anything like that is handled within our classroom. Our management style has a dedicated leader at every site. If there is any complaint about a tutor or a program manager, we have a site manager that would interface with the leadership at the school. In instances where we have had something that is more elevated for whatever reason, we would engage the leadership team in the organization, and that could be that could go as high as the CEO interfacing with the superintendent, or the CEO interfacing with a grantor or a funder. And I think we deal with things like that head on. If there's something that we're accountable for that we need to deliver differently, we want to get the feedback, and we want the appropriate person at the appropriate level to address the complaint. We're very careful that our tutors who are responsible for tutoring students, not managers, may not have the life experience to handle a complaint or to, address a leader in an organization. So that will normally be handled by a middle manager, program manager, and if necessary, it's called a caution. It would be escalated to somebody in the head offices, and then we would reach out and deal with it.
Understood. Thank you for sharing that. So to change gears just a little bit, for this next question, what type of data does your department generate, and how do you use that data to achieve strategic goals?
So the way that our literacy program operates is each individual tutor deals with 5 to 6 students. And each day that they work with a student, they enter data into our AppCot, which is our data management system. And they will indicate, has the oral reading fluency level gone up? Has the student mastered a concept? Have they shown proficiency? And then we will do a report pull on Thursdays where our data management team pulls executive level reports of all different kinds. In general, we generate the data that indicates how well students are pacing or tracking through the program. We also generate data that indicates cautions, things that are out of alignment with appropriate levels of progress, and we address those. And we also generate data weekly on additional programming, if we've done enrichment or offered something to the schools through a partner organization. And so we can generate out of the academic office on behalf of the CEO probably between 5 and 8 reports a week of a certain scope, and then those are reviewed by management. And I'm management because I'm a chief academic. And then we will look at the scope of our work. If we're there for a semester or a quarter, we will analyze our data to see how we're tracking against goal.
Got it. Thank you, Joanne.
Mhm.
For our next question, how do you identify and manage unsatisfied employees within the workplace?
I think that's a challenging question. I think uh, I think all employees have a certain level of unrest because if you're pushing the organization forward, they feel that tension. If you're dedicated to outcomes, they feel that tension. It doesn't necessarily mean they're unsatisfied. But within our organization, we have the role of a chief of staff, Laura Venandi, and she has overall responsibility for aligning roles and responsibilities and keeping an eye on how we're tracking. Do we have the right people in the right roles to get the right work done? Beyond that, we have an HR department, which was expanded this year or refreshed, I would say. And we have excellent leadership in that role. And our employees know that they can go discreetly to HR and that they can initiate, if they have a complaint against another employee or against the scope of their work or working conditions, and that HR will respectfully and confidentially deal with that complaint. In terms of something that doesn't escalate to that level, if someone has an issue or they're unsatisfied. I had one of our younger workers yesterday come in and say, I know I'm not under review, but I don't know if I'm on track. So that tells me that the person doesn't feel clarity. And so we sat down, I reaffirmed all the good things that the employee's been working on. I highlighted some independent projects and, let them know that I was grateful that if they were feeling that way, they came to meet with me so that we could talk about it.
Understood. For our next question, how do you address negative feedback from a client regarding your program's service? And how do you mitigate that feedback?
So we present at the end of the year-long outcome reports to our clients. We also, at the end of a cycle of tutoring, will do an interim presentation. Even with that level of transparency, we will get negative feedback occasionally from data-driven leaders out in, schools and organizations that want a deeper level of transparency, more data, more frequent communication, and occasionally there's a mismatch between this is how our program rolls out, this is how we deliver it, and what their expectations are. So most recently, I met with a client who had 3 valid concerns, and they were largely empowering the school leader with the right knowledge and information to share with the parents of students we serve, because they were getting pushback on, here's this great outside organization coming in, tutoring literacy, but we don't know what's going on. So how I address negative feedback is first with humility. If someone's telling you something, there's a reason behind it. And secondly, we have heard most questions in many different settings, and it could be something we can address. It could be something about who we are that we simply have to explain. And so I find that if you show up and you give an honest and thoughtful response, normally the client is satisfied with that. And if they have a suggestion that points you in another direction, for ours, it would be a deeper level of shared progress monitoring when kids are in our program. Our programs are fairly quick, 6 to 14 weeks or 6 to 12 weeks. And a student reporting progress weekly to a parent or a school would probably be too frequent for how our program operates. But as we move forward and expand, we have been exploring outside progress monitoring tools that allow us to more readily share data when requested so that we can handle that.
Thank you for that one. And I am cognizant of time and I want to be respectful of your time. So this next question will be our last question.
Certainly.
What is your philosophical approach to solving organizational issues?
So my philosophical approach to solving organizational issues is to anticipate that you're going to have issues, to avoid being reactive as a management team. On any given day, when you are operating hundreds of employees at multiple sites, things are not going to go smoothly. And what I do and have always done as a leader is I do a lot of scenarios training for my team and for myself to understand that, these 10 things could happen, and to be thoughtful about how would you respond in the event of this happening. 3 tutors call off at a particular site. You're not going to be able to serve the students. It's going to put you behind in the contract. What is your management decision? How are you going to deal with that? In our case, we would deploy members of our staff from the head offices. They would understand that was part of their job to be utilized out in the field. And that would be our chosen method to respond to what, if we didn't have that already sorted out, could look like a crisis in that classroom. So my approach is to be as proactive as possible. I think that you have to make everybody on your team understand that at any given time, you may have to be a utility player. You may have to serve a role outside of your defined scope, but hopefully within your range. And as a long-term management tool, we use offsites, strategic meetings where we take a day and set aside time to really think more deeply about our broader view of the work that we're doing.
Absolutely. And I just want to say that you have thoroughly covered each one of our topics in our questions here. I just want to say thank you for providing this time out of your day to have this interview with me. And again, I just want to thank Ms. Joanne Jones from Beyond Basics, Chief Academic Officer. And I want to go ahead and just be respectful of this interview by concluding it. I'm your host, Don Q. Patterson of Liberty University, and I adjourn this interview. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.